Hey everyone, Sam here. Thanks for joining me. I hope you're having a beautiful day wherever you are in the world. I thought I'd mix it up a bit today. I'm sitting in the other corner of my art studio. I've been working on some seascape paintings, as you can see behind me. And this video follows on from the last video I made where, if you remember, I was designing a seascape composition using my iPad, Procreate and an Apple Pencil. So I was actually drawing it from scratch, but just on my iPad. So that process is done, and the next stage is to block in the colour study, which is pretty much just like a small painting, and that's what I'm going to show you in this video. So even though I've titled this video How to Paint Rocks, I'll be showing you some other aspects of the painting process as well. Now, just before I start the video, I'd just like to quickly tell you about my Patreon channel, where I'm providing full-length painting tutorial videos every month for just $5 a month, and there's about 2 years worth of painting videos on there, so it's like a landscape painting course, but I've put the link in the description box below. Now, as well as that, I've got full-length painting tutorial videos available from my website, and if you sign up to my email list, I'm giving away a free ebook called Introduction to Oil Painting. So if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. That's enough of my rambling, we'll just get into it, and I hope you enjoy the video. I'm painting on an 8" by 8" linen panel, and this is a oil primed medium weave Belgium linen that's mounted to Baltic birch and made by a company called canvaspanels.com in the USA. And I love painting on these because they're really convenient, they're easy to frame, easy to ship, and they're just brilliant for small to medium sized paintings and for painting outdoors on plein air. So I'm sketching out the composition using a No. 0 round brush and burnt sienna mixed with a medium called liquin. And as I'm using oil paint here, the liquin speeds up the drying time and it also improves the flow of the paint. But for me, the real advantage of using this medium is the quick drying time. So as I just said, I'm using oil paint to create this artwork. And the brand of paint I'm using is called Blue Ridge Oil Colours. I love this brand, they're just absolutely beautiful to paint with. Really nice artist quality oils, and the company is based in North Carolina in the USA. So I'll go over the colours that I generally use for landscapes and seascapes, and this includes titanium white, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, cadmium yellow, cadmium orange, alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue and phthalo green. So as I said, I'm using Blue Ridge Oil Colours, and if you want to get your hands on some Blue Ridge Oil Colours, I've put a link to their website in the description box below. Now, just some quick tips on composition, especially when you're painting seascapes, and one of the main things is never have your horizon line in the centre, i.e. a centred horizon line, because this is a major distraction in the composition. So either have a higher horizon or a lower horizon. In this case, I've gone for a high horizon because I not only want to fit the breaking wave, which is one of the main focal areas of the painting, but I also want to capture the detail of the rocks. The other thing, of course, about composition is never have centered objects either, because that also is very distracting in a composition and just spoils the rhythm and flow of a painting. Now, as I said in my intro, whilst I'm going to show you the process of this study which I'm blocking in, I am going to mainly focus on the rocks. Now, the first thing I do whenever I start blocking in a painting is I think about where all the dark values and shadows are within the subject that I'm painting. Value refers to how light or dark a subject is. We'll find our darkest darks and our lightest lights in the foreground, but as landforms recede, or in this case it could be distant rocks, although there isn't any distant rocks in this painting, but darks are not as dark and lights are not as light, and that's because the value scale narrows. So the first thing I did here when painting these rocks was I identified where all the deep shadows are and occlusion shadows, which are mainly in the cracks and furrows within the rocks. What I did here was I mixed ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, which with these two colours combined you can create a near black, and part of the reason is because burnt sienna is a dark orange and orange is opposite to blue on the colour wheel, so when they're combined they cancel each other out and we can create some very dark tones with it. If you were to combine this colour mixture with some titanium white, then you can create some beautiful natural looking greys with these colours. And very often with this colour combination, which I use for shadows in the landscape and clouds, in fact it's my general go-to colour mix, but I'll often add a little bit of alizarin crimson as well to give the mix a violet tint. So as I said, in this case I'm painting the darkest shadows in the rocks, which are a near black. I've edged the mixture more on the blue side and I'm applying the paint with a number 5 flat brush. Now the brushes I'm using in this painting are made by a company called Rosemary & Co. I've been using these brushes for years. They're based in the UK and they ship worldwide. Beautiful brushes to paint with, and I mainly use the bristle brushes from their classic range. So if you want to get hold of some Rosemary & Co. brushes, I've put the link in the description box below. So once I'd painted these darkest of shadows within the rocks, the next area I focused on was the cloud shadows, because I'm actually going to be using the same colours within the mix, although I'm adding to the mix some titanium white and a little alizarin crimson. And I'm going to keep that mixture more on the blue side so it has a bluish violet cast to it. Again, I'm marking this in with a number 5 flat brush. Now during the blocking stage I'm not at all worried about detail. The main thing is just getting that paint down and creating a tonal dynamic, atmospheric depth, and just getting those colours and values in. Overall during the painting I'm going to keep the value of my colours darker so that I've got plenty of room to add lighter layers as I work through the painting, and then I'll be saving my lightest values until the very end, and this is where I'll be adding the final highlights to the white water of the breaking wave and that foamy water in the foreground. But I'm going to be building up to this so that when I add those final highlights the painting pops. Once I've established my dark values and shadows within the rocks and clouds, I've built a bit of a tonal dynamic to work from, so I then started working on the sky, painting those cloud highlights and then the sky itself, and then started marking in the sea, and the sea is a mix of mostly ultramarine blue with a little yellow ochre, a small amount of phthalo green and some titanium white. The glow in the breaking wave is a mix of yellow ochre with some phthalo green and titanium white. And then as I work down to the deeper shadow areas in the lower section of the wave, I start adding more ultramarine blue. The shadows in the white water and the foam, especially on the breaking wave, is a mix of ultramarine blue with a little burnt sienna, alizarin crimson and titanium white. So back to the rocks. The next areas I'm going to paint in these rocks are the halftones. So there's lots of the areas of these rocks that are in shadow, but many of the areas of the rocks that are in shadow are being bathed in the reflected light that's surrounding it. And as this reflected light is mainly coming from the surrounding water, it's going to have a blue cast to it. Now I want to maintain colour harmony throughout the painting, and the main way we can do this is by using common colours throughout the painting. So I'm conscious to try and carry similar colours throughout. As I said a moment ago, a good simple colour combination for shadows is ultramarine blue with burnt sienna, titanium white and even a little alizarin crimson, and that's the colours I'm using here to paint many of these halftones that are within the rocks. Now because already I've used these same colours in the deep rock shadows, also the clouds and the shadows in the white water, it's going to tie all those zones together, making the painting look much more harmonious, and then ultimately when it's completed the painting will read well to the viewer, and the viewer might not even necessarily know why the colours in the painting look so nice, but it's because of the colour harmony. The other thing I try and achieve is clean colour as well, so trying to use as fewer colours in the mix as possible. Now this isn't always achievable, especially if you're painting things like vegetation and trees and plants and things like that. But wherever I can I try and use less colours if possible. Now at this stage I've mainly been painting the reflected light rock surfaces here, and then I go back over with my dark mix that I used in the beginning just to add things like cracks and fissures within the rocks and just build up some of the form of the rocks overall. Rocks can be pretty complex structures to paint, so I try and break them down by identifying where the dark occlusion shadows are, where the midtones are, and then where the areas of light are as well. Next, I paint the areas of these rocks on the right side of the painting that are in the full sunlight. And they have a kind of rusty yellow-brown colour to them, so I mix this with yellow ochre, burnt sienna, titanium white and a tiny amount of ultramarine blue. And the ultramarine blue just helps to desaturate the colour a little bit and just keep it in check overall. When it came to painting the areas of the large rock on the left side of the painting, the areas that are in the full sunlight, I've actually used the same colours that I used in the shadow, but this time went much heavier on the titanium white and burnt sienna. So this colour is a mix of titanium white, burnt sienna, alizarin crimson and just a little bit of ultramarine blue. So this has created a kind of pinkish brown colour, but totally harmonious with the rest of the rocks because I've used the same colours in the shadows, but just different mixtures. Once I'd finished blocking in the painting, I left it to dry for a couple of days and then I could begin adding the details to it. Now, as I worked on the next painting session, I was starting to layer on more paint, adding lighter layers and just building up the detail and modelling the paint overall. Really working across the whole painting, from the clouds to the sea, the breaking wave and the white water. Then when it came to painting the rocks again, I started adding lighter layers, especially to the sunlit areas. I was using the exact same mix that I used during the block-in stage, which was burnt sienna, titanium white, alizarin crimson and a little ultramarine blue, but this time making some of those layers much lighter than the previous layer. However, I'm adding the layers a bit more sparingly now. The other thing I did here was build up the form and structure of the rocks, making them look much more three-dimensional by painting that reflected light, and again using the same colours as I have in the rest of the rocks, but going more heavy on the ultramarine blue and titanium white which is in the mix. I'm really about keeping all my values in check, so it can't be too light either. I'm also using smaller brushes at this point, in this case a number 3 flat brush. Once I painted the halftones within the rocks, I then redefined the shape of the rocks by adding some more of those cracks within it, using my shadow mix for the occlusion shadows, a mix of burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. I'm getting into much more detail here now. Now, I spent quite a bit of time on the rocks during this session of the painting, and then what I needed to do was let the whole thing dry again, because the last part of this painting was where I was adding the final highlights that's going to bring the whole thing to life, and this includes in the rocks as well. I painted some foam patterns within the breaking wave and then turned my attention back on the rocks, adding some subtle highlights to the reflected light surfaces of those areas of the rocks that are in shadow. Not too much though, but just a little suggestion just to define the shapes of the rocks more. All the while I'm using the same colour combinations I've been using all along. Now lastly, to add some definition to that large group of rocks on the left side of the painting, and to make the surfaces look like they might be a little bit wet, it could have had some sea spray splash over it, I've painted a few highlights, and this is a mix of titanium white with a little burnt sienna. I've also added these to some of the other rocks within the painting as well. One of the last things I did here was paint the highlights on the breaking wave and the white water in the foreground, and this is where I've saved my lightest values. Here I've used a mix of titanium white with just a small amount of yellow ochre, and that yellow ochre is going to give the white some warmth so that it doesn't look icy cold. I've really only used a small amount of yellow ochre. My brushes are much smaller and I'm using a number 0 round brush. So aside from adding a couple more details, I decided this painting was complete. And I was really happy with this colour study, and I decided that I was going to use it to create a larger artwork. Now at the time of making this video, I've just blocked in the larger version of this, and so when the painting's finished I'll make a video on this and I'll show you some of the process. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to my channel. So I'll be keeping you posted as this whole Seascape painting project progresses, because I've got lots more paintings planned as well. As you can see behind me, I've got the colour studies which I've been blocking in. They're not finished yet, but still got quite a bit of a way to go. But I've got quite a few Seascape paintings planned, so I'll be making videos on these and showing you the process as I go along. Now, as I said before, if you want to get access to my full-length painting tutorial videos, check out my Patreon channel and my website. Also, don't forget, if you sign up to the email list, you get a free ebook on Introduction to Oil Painting. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you're having a beautiful day. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.